How you guys doing? We got a lineup here. We got the normal lineup of guests. Or at this point, you guys are hosts. You guys are my family. Like I already mentioned it in the last show. We're at the point now where we got enough chemistry down. That you guys don't gotta ask to go in my refrigerator, but you better not eat all my food either. So we have that mutual respect now, where I trust you. We're not doing the sleepover where I gotta trust you, but you better not take advantage of it. Speaking of which, I really enjoy weeks where I lose sometimes, Jeff, but we'll get into that in a minute. Donnie actually had a very serious story we should hit on initially, so I'm going to kick it over to Donnie. Uh, but yeah, just welcome in, Gov and Donnie. But Donnie, take the floor, man. I know you want to talk about it. It's important.
Yeah. Okay. So during the Lions and Patriots game, we saw Savion Smith. I believe that's how you say his first name. Went down with that.
Xavier.
Yeah. He went down with that injury. Took it away in an ambulance. A very scary situation. We did find out that he did have movement in all of his extremities, and I believe I even saw he flew back with the Lions.
I had heard that. I hadn't confirmed it, but even the thought, because what it scared me, Donnie, because I've never seen, and for Gov who might not have even known it was happening.
I
Uh,
remember seeing the injury on Red Zone, but I don't know anything about it. No.
yeah, quickly, I'll just recap what happened. So the young man went to press Hunter Henry, and it, it as soon as he like dipped his head to like put any kind of leverage into Hunter Henry's like shoulder, just like any other press, Henry just went through the motions, and obviously the motions of getting off the press, just like any other football player would do. But it looked funny, like right from the start. Like the guy pretty much put his head down and then just collapsed, like almost like an old man would just have a heart attack. And it was like that wasn't a normal move. That wasn't like he got pushed to the ground or had any kind of force at all. And so like I was like, that's kind of strange. And then actually the broadcast kind of made fun of it, like, oh, he's a rookie corner and maybe he's inexperienced, but he fell down. Like that wasn't a good start for the Lions. I'm like, it didn't look like he just fell down to me. Like kind of funny. So like I was about to go back, but then they were like, oh, this is serious. So I stayed with the broadcast. And he didn't move for a good while, and then they rushed the ambulance on like right away. Even they didn't even bring out a stretcher first. They like rushed the ambulance on. And then what was weird, Gov, is they actually called his dad down to the like on the field, where usually they'll meet the parents like in the loading dock of the stadium, you know, before they go. But apparently they were so worried about his neurologics that they were like, no, we need to get this dad, you know, his loved one, his family, his support down here right now, because like we need to leave the field, you know, with urgency here. So even more than typical urgency, I suppose. So the fact that he's all right is kind of a miracle, you know. It, so I'm really glad to hear it.
It's good for him. I'm glad to hear that.
So that, but that bleeds into like a good conversation too. It's a lot of times people are like, oh well, you shouldn't cheer for injuries, or like, you know, well, if it's this player's injury and it's not that serious, we can then look. I don't think anyone cheers for injuries, but we all know that injuries benefit fantasy football. That's a fact. Injuries benefit football. If you're Kenneth Walker today, I'm sorry, you feel better about your NFL prospects based on the Penny injury. It's not to say he's celebrating. You know, I'm sure he's not celebrating. I'm sure he was saddened by his teammate. Last night, for example, this wasn't injury related, but it's a prime example of the same kind of thing. It was the first time that Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst had played against each other. And Mark Andrews was pretty candid and it was just like, I knew I was better than him for the role the Ravens wanted me to play because I was a better blocker. But he's like, I was sad to lose Hayden Hurst as a pass catcher because I knew what it meant for the team. You know, like I knew what his role meant, and I knew he could play in the league. And so, like, I just want to mention that because, like, the Lions had 7 injuries just in the secondary alone. We saw Penny go down with injuries. We saw a lot of injuries. So, like, if you won money, don't feel bad because you won money off of an injury. Because there was a lot of people who made money off of injuries. But that doesn't mean we have to celebrate it either. You know? So I just kind of want to play both sides of the coin. For example, you know, I also saw, you know, guys run up to this guy out of the tunnel, you know, a lot of times, or guys, I should say, whenever a lion went down, a Patriot made sure he ran across the field to, like, make sure he was okay. So, like, when we do these things, it can be both. It can be good and bad. And that's true with fantasy and reality. I just want to make that point very clear as well. Any other big takeaways that I think the mainstream media gets wrong? Because that's one of them, that we just have to have this guttural reaction to things. And I think it can be both.
I don't got much. I just
Yeah, that's
Well, let's do this thing, Gov. Let's say, what was the transition? Was there a play that just made so much sense? Because I have heard a lot of it this morning as I was listening to other recap shows, saying you should have just played your cash lineup because cash did really good in GPPs. So name some of the guys that you just, like, thought were good plays, whether they were GPP plays, whether they were cash plays.
I mean, my big one was probably Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
Tyler Lockett was a good play no matter what. He was getting heavy target usage in a game that definitely looked like it had shootout potential with 2 bad defenses. There was no reason Lockett couldn't have a good game. He was in my cash lineup from the beginning. He smashed and honestly didn't come in as super highly owned in tournaments, so he was an okay tournament play if you used him correctly. Although this week was very crazy because the lineup that won the Millie was a 2v2 off of my cash lineup from that morning.
Well, we
And
saw
so,
a lot
like,
of 2v2s.
Yeah. Everyone had a 2v2 off the cash lineup. And luckily, because of the variance in cash and head-to-heads, that caused me to still win more than like 70% of my cash games. But it also meant if you were like dead on with the nuts on your 2v2, you got to the freaking top of the tournaments.
Yeah.
It's like, I think the cash lineup at the beginning of the day scored 212 points.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you had the right 2v2 and got off, I think in the actual cash lineup, what you had to do was get off of Olave and something else. I think it was you get off of Olave and Godwin. Although I still think Godwin was in the Millie lineup, so it was something else. Or maybe it was. It might have been both New Orleans guys. You get off Olave and Kamara, or whatever it was.
Right.
Play Breece Hall and then correlate Gabe Davis with Josh Allen. Boom! You have the lineup that won.
Right.
With still Cowboys D, with still Lenny Fournette and Jeff Wilson at running back for your chalk. Still Josh Allen at the quarterback. Still had Lockett and Higbee. Like, that was the cash lineup that most people were running. Maybe you did a 1v1 and played Stevenson instead of Breece Hall. Or maybe you did a 1v1 and went down to Cade Otton at tight end and instead of Higbee so you could fit in other stuff. Like, a lot of people had 1v1 and 2v2s off of that playing in cash. And if you had the correct 2v2, you shipped the Millie.
Well, for example, Cade Otton had the same amount of points as O.J. Howard last week. I believe they both had, it was either pretty much merely the same or like within a point of each other. I think one had 4, one had 5. But that speaks to week by week isn't always the same, but also speaks that you can do the correct thing and get unlucky. Just like you can do the unlucky thing and you can win. Like, was Chris Olave a bad play? No, he got hurt,
Exactly.
Uh,
That's why, like, he was he was a good play. That's why he was the cash play, but
right.
it just ended up going poorly for him.
Well, I made the argument with Donnie 2 different ways. I said, given the opportunity and how much targets Stephon Diggs out targeted Gabe Davis, London was still a better player than Gabe Davis, in my opinion. The results will tell you different, but like if we had 20/20 vision, we wouldn't need to do any of these review shows. The whole point of this show, and the whole point I call it Revise the Prize, isn't to chase the prize. It's to review how we get to be prized, how we become prize fighters. And if you're a prize fighter in the DFS combative sport that it really is, you're going to take some punches and sometimes you're going to get knocked out. And it's not always going to be your fault. And sometimes these players get knocked out. Sometimes we get knocked out by our own biases. It's not to say Gabe Davis wasn't talented or didn't deserve the points, but the whole point was in a vacuum, I thought London had more targets available to him based on the offense's need for him, based on previous performances, based on overall health, because he came into that game healthier than Gabe Davis. Now, what's funny is the stuff that we can't control is what took effect, and he actually left the game with an injury. Gabe Davis came off of injury and actually looked good for the first time since coming off that injury. Those are kind of the components that we can't control. But neither were a bad play, but I thought that the plugin was still saying London was the better play. So, like, that's why me and Gov talked about it a couple weeks ago, I think before Donnie even joined us. And Donnie's been a great addition. That proves that, not to say that before Donnie, there was never good points by me and Gov as well. That when things happen, they don't always have to correlate. We should correlate for the highest upside, but some things just are going to happen. Like the Millie lineups are always going to be more fluky than a smaller contest that wins. I want to go back to that point, but I just want to. Was there any other takeaways, Donnie? Because I know you followed fantasy football or DraftKings pretty closely for the first time ever, because we did build that lineup. What were some of your takeaways as like a first time DFS kind of sweater? What was that sweat like for you?
It was fun. I enjoyed it. London was killing me, with Mariota and London having basically nothing for the first half. That was just irking me because this lineup was really nice. It even ended out finishing pretty well too.
Yeah, McCaffrey was a solid late game hammer for this one. Like he was actually he could have busted one, but I'm so happy. I really hope they just clear house for my Panthers right now. Like I really want to. I hope anyone who took that bet. I was about to say, I really hope anyone who took the bet on first coach fired through the year, Matt Rule, that was a clear smash.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it could be an uptick for DJ Moore to get PJ Walker, because I believe that PJ and DJ have. It's not just the initial names. I mean,
and I hope it's Walker. It very well could be Darnold coming back, but I hope it's Walker.
I think it's Walker for at least this week. I'm saying I think the correlated names DJ and PJ have a connection, and it's beyond the narrative.
I actually did hear. Maybe this is just rumors being what?
No, I knew you were about to say
what was
something.
that?
I'll give you the floor.
Yeah. No, this could just be rumors being rumors, but Christian McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson, allegedly the Panthers are willing to eat up the cap hit and move off of them too. They might just be in complete reset mode at this point.
Yeah, that I don't want to see is them completely. I want to see them blow up the front office because the front office has
They
screwed
fired their
this
DC
team.
too.
Yeah, like I'm really hoping they just blow up the front. Well, the defense has been pretty good.
Unfortunately, you guys lost Horn, so
Yeah,
that's going to hurt. 'Cause
And their interim head coach, last time we saw him coach, he was awful. Wilkes, I think his last name is.
yeah,
He was the Cardinals guy. Was it the Rosen year where they went like 1-15?
it was.
Ugh.
See, I told you Donnie knows his stuff. Like, what? I was trying to get into one more like subtopic because there's not many times with Donnie where you can like experience a sweat for the first time ever. And so like you haven't even experienced like a good winning, but like that initial like I get to track a lineup. There are so many different ways to do it. Like I know people that don't watch at all. I know people that watch, but they don't like to know the exact number because they like to play this like fantasy game in their head and then see what the end looks like. Is there anything you like if you were to do this again and you're like, okay, I got my first week out of the way. If I was to sweat another week, I would do this or I wouldn't do this. Like I guess what did you learn from like paying attention to our lineup so much? Did it add something to the game? Did it take it away?
Well, it definitely kept me more sucked into games, but it also pulled me away from like looking at. Yeah, I had 2 games on at the same time, and then I had a version of the scores going up on a laptop as well.
Mm-hmm.
It made it very enjoyable, and got me through commercials very quickly, which is nice. I will say every time I saw like a Brees Hall highlight, that made it very exciting for me, even as a Patriots fan.
See, Gov, we're around so many experienced DFS people. I love to live vicariously through Donnie in that moment. He was like genuinely excited. He's like, wait, we got DK Metcalf. Like it was almost like he got to put together the puzzle pieces live. And then he felt bad for Gov because he's like, maybe Gov doesn't want to sweat like this. We should probably take this conversation to the DMs. So like, is there any kind of like takeaway questions you had for Donnie for his first time ever sweating a lineup?
well, no real takeaway questions because
it's okay if you don't. I was
about to say because I know how I feel when I sweat my lineups and
Yeah.
like last night in the showdown I was sweating one and it was like it
Well-
definitely made me pay attention to the game more.
Why don't you talk?
Oh, I'm so mad Mixon didn't get that touchdown.
Well, why don't you talk about that, Gov? Because I know me and you sweat like we sweat differently, even though it does have some similarities. Because Donnie was sweating more like I do, where he's like got 3 monitors going. He knows the score at all times. He's like itching. He's like, at one point, Donnie's like, "Hey, I know you're at commercial. Send me the lineup." You know, like, but you sweat in a totally different way. Like you know your players, but you don't look at lineups, correct?
Yeah, I don't go into DraftKings and look at the specific lineup. I know my players.
Yeah, tell Donnie that process. Like, show
And
him
I don't build so many lineups that I don't mostly know what a lineup like. I can sit and be like, okay, the lineup this morning was this Josh Allen stack. I had Gabe Davis and Shakir. I had a Kamara DK Metcalf mini. I used cheap Michael Gallup and cheap Bears defense to fit stuff in. Like I can remember stuff like that throughout the day for like one of my main lineups. So like I will just sit at home, I will watch the games, and I will look at DK live to see what their actual fantasy point score is. And then I'll just like I'll know. It's like, wow, I know I have Josh Allen, Gabe Davis, Shakir. So when Gabe Davis scores that 98-yard touchdown, I know. When he scores the next one,
right.
I know real right then, like, okay, this lineup is live. Then at the same time, I had a moment at work where I almost shit my pants, like, because like Gabe Davis scores the 98-yard touchdown, Then immediately after, Metcalf scores the 50-yarder. And I know I have them both in the same lineup. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'm live today. Like that immediate thought early in the day. Like I don't even have, I have the games on in my ear because I'm at work. It's like, I know what's going on in my lineup. I can't look at it exactly. I don't have DK open, but it's like, I know. I get off work, I go home, I still don't look at the lineup. I know what's my cash lineup is. I'm looking at those players. Lockett went off. Perfect. Went off. Perfect. Allen went off. Perfect. Like just checking through the list. So I know the cash lineup's good because everyone had a solid day. And then I just start thinking about my tournament. Like, okay, so Josh Allen was good. So what was my Josh Allen tournament lineup? What are all the guys in that? All right, Kamara had 27. Boom. All right, so that mini worked out perfect. Along with the Josh Allen, Gabe Davis, Shakir. I didn't have a bring back. I used cheat Michael Gallup instead of having a bring back. I had a cheat, or instead of Pickens in the same range, I preferred Marvin Jones from the Jags. And he was like the only Jag to work. The only Jag to work was Marvin Jones Jr. He had 20 points. So it's like that was my best lineup, but it still was not good enough because the other running back in that lineup was Damian Harris. And like, you can have one and still have a good lineup, just like we did. We didn't have a perfect lineup.
Yeah.
We had a couple duds, and that's what kept us from like shipping. But because of the other pieces we had, we were live.
Yeah. I still like the risk we took with Mariota in London, but
yeah, no. And to be fair, like the stack didn't work, but like, so like look at it from how we built it. We started with the stack. Mariota, London, bring it back with K. Dot. That didn't end up working, but okay. Next thing we did was jam in our stud, and Diggs was fine. Like Gabe got the extra touchdown, but Diggs could have easily gotten a second touchdown and had 35 points.
Well, actually, Allen missed Diggs wide open on a 20-yard touchdown.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Diggs could easily had a second touchdown and had 35 plus points. So like our stud play of the week was fine. He didn't totally smash, but that game had a player that totally smashed, and Diggs was in a perfect spot to do that. He got all the volume. Like he could have easily had a massive day too. So like the stack didn't work, but we were fine using that stack so we could fit in guys like Stephon Diggs and guys like Christian McCaffrey, who both had perfectly fine days for jamming them in. It's not like they busted and had like 11 points. I got 27 from Diggs and 27 from McCaffrey. Like you can't hate on that. Then like the other correlation that we have was we went with our mini stack of our running back and our defense, and that completely smashed. So like Breece Hall was like just perfect. You target the targets, and he got the targets, and he ran the ball, and he got his touchdowns. And it was just a beast of a game, like 2 targets for 100 yards.
And he almost had an 80-yard touchdown, but he got tackled at the one and Carter stole a touchdown.
So then it was a 79-yard run. Otherwise, it would have been 2 for 101 and a touchdown. He would have had almost 40.
Carter actually had 2 1-yard touchdowns, so that could have been that almost
exactly. So like there were so many like little chunk pieces that we did to build this lineup, so that we basically just had 4 things we made our decision on. And one of them didn't work. The other 3 did. The lineup was perfectly fine. Like 159 is a solid score most weeks. Yeah. And if let's say instead of Mariota, we did Geno. Right. So we would have had Geno and Metcalf. We would have brought it back with probably Olave instead of London at about the same price. And then we would have had a different cheap tight end from this exact lineup. It might have done a little better, but like not by much.
And I should say, I was going to put this in a contest, a paid contest, if I did well for the London game. But it was more, since it was our initial lineup, I wanted it to be kind of that, like, we didn't worry about the price point as much for our first lineup, and we just focused on the process. And I gotta say, I don't hate a single thing about this lineup, even the things that didn't work out. Like I mentioned off the top of the show, I still stand by the London play over Gabe Davis. You know, I still think DK Metcalf was a better play than Lockett because Metcalf gives you higher ceiling, and we're playing in mostly the promotional contest for our first contest. So we were already being super contrarian with Mariota. So we're banking on that 80-yard touchdown, which is what we got basically from Metcalf. But that also speaks to like how we did get lucky in some ways but we also got unlucky because I think as Gov was making his point about Brees Hall only having 2 receptions, that was probably the luck part that like out of the 2 targets, he took one of them for 80 yards. So you could say, oh, that's lucky. But he got a goal line carry stolen from him from Carter when obviously Hall had a more productive day. So like it's half a dozen here, half a dozen there, but it's a collection of the egg carton altogether. It was a good play.
And speaking of lucky and injuries, Teddy Bridgewater got hurt. That definitely helped us.
Right.
Yep, that helped the defense play. That caused you to run the ball more. And Brees Hall did like the events of the game was helpful to like maximize the ceiling of our plays, but we still picked them as good plays. Like we still thought the Jets could win that game.
Well, that was our
and
lock
so
of the week.
Yeah, like we thought the Jets could win that game. So of course we're going to play the running backs because in a winning game script, the running backs are usually better. Same thing with the defense to pair it with that. Like if we thought the Jets were going to win that game, playing Brees Hall and the Jets defense together was a great play in our lineup before the game plays out. Now, did it play out perfectly? Like almost. Like if Brees Hall gets those 2 touchdowns, he probably also gets 3 yards. So now he double bonuses with triple touchdowns. You're talking like he would have had a 50-point day and been like the crazy break your slate guy, which he almost was. But yeah, so many guys actually smashed. Like one of the reasons this lineup didn't do any better in this tournament was the fact that
it was a small
McCaffrey's 23 was basically matched by almost every like Pierce, Stevenson, right, Jeff Wilson, Dalvin Cook. Like there was almost everyone scored a bunch. So there was a whole bunch of different combinations. Like I bet if we just click on 3 or 4 random lineups in this range right around us, they'll have like 6. They'll literally be 6v6s off us. You don't even have to go that high.
Yeah. Well,
that one has like 1 player we were playing.
Right. That's why I did it, because I went that high to prove that it was a smaller contest. And like in small contests, you know, you don't even need to get that different, you know.
No, but I'm saying like there were so many different combinations in the same range. So like even at the same score we were at, you just click on a lineup 1 or 2 positions up or down of it, and it's still going to be like a 6v6 off of us. Boom, like even right there. Yeah, that one's like 1 or 2 off of us. Yeah. And it literally has not a single player we were playing. But Chubb smashed, Stevenson smashed. So like the same thing. They got the dud from Corey Davis. Right. Instead of playing Olave. Like they got but then they played the chalky defense and got 23 points where we only got 9 from the Jets. Like
But I like this because we played different players, but really they're the same player. For example, I'll give you an example. So Chris Olave is the DK Metcalf of this of our lineup, right? He's the home run hitter that you know the quarterback likes to target deep. Travis Etienne is the Brees Hall. He's the rookie that you haven't seen it yet, but you know the potential there. And I know Etienne's technically not a rookie, but he is a rookie. Like we're all NBA fans. He's like the veteran who hadn't got on the field yet because he played international. Like he he knew the sport, but he hadn't played yet. So like
Yep.
essentially this is his rookie year.
Yep. Chubb is your pay up running back, which is our McCaffrey.
That was on McCaffrey.
Yep.
And then
They
Evans,
decided to pay up for the stack, so they have Brady Evans instead of Mariota London.
right. And then
So to do that, you had to pay down at defense to the chalky defense at the bottom. You had to pay down at wide receiver for Corey Davis. And you had to pay down and not have like an Atlanta bring back to it.
Right.
Yeah, and they had Ertz, who had the same amount of points as Otten, basically.
Yeah. So
Right.
they paid. So yeah. So like.
So what they did.
Yeah, I don't hate the construction of. I don't hate the construction of this lineup, and it's basically the same as the one we built, a little worse, but it still has smash plays.
Well, he paid up for consistency at tight end. We paid. That's where we got a little bit. We got a little bit. Cute.
We decided to pay down and use it as the bring back in our stack. Right. We like if we're gonna pay down, let's correlate. So that's what we did. We paid down and correlated our tight end with our stack, and our stack didn't work. But it allowed us to fit in a lineup that did work around it. Like had Mariota gone for 22, just like Brady, and London has the kind of game that, like, let's say Lockett had and has like 20 or has like a Stephon Diggs game like we had, which is sort of what we were hoping on, getting that number one wide receiver game. Even if he just gets to 20, he doesn't even have to get to 30. Let's say both Mariota and London get to 20. Now we have a 180-point lineup or something. That's much better.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up another example. But another thing I want to mention, because like we watch so many review shows and people get discouraged and you've been doing it for so long. I really want to hearken while we have the chance, because there's only so many times that like a little kid can experience Christmas. And that's kind of what I feel like exposing Donnie to this like new way of enjoying football. What's the one thing that you miss about being a novice DFS go? Like, what's the one thing, if you could go back and be like, having all this knowledge is good, but like, this is what I miss most about not being so assurant about all of this information.
Oh,
is there any like big takeaways? Because I got one, but I kind of like that we got this pause and we got.
I'd have to hear yours, because like part of me really starting to like enjoy, like I've always sort of liked numbers, and so I've been the nerdy kid, and I played like collect card games and stuff. So like just being able to figure, like my first steps into fantasy were basically sort of projection based anyway and DFS based. So it's like season long leagues that I felt like, because I was so smart with numbers, I could just run edges against guys in season long leagues, and it worked in 2011. So like it's just sort of what I've been doing. So like I'd have to hear what you have to say, because I feel like everything I've gained in the last 2, 3, 4 years playing DFS really hardcore every Sunday. Yeah. I love all of that stuff.
I do too. But to see the way Donnie loved it as like the novice again was great. And I also saw this in our comment section too, and I think it's so valuable. And that's why I was so excited that Donnie got to experience it. Like, and I got to interact with him. Because obviously in the comment section, I didn't see it until after the fact. But one of the commenters commented like he had always played fantasy, but never really DFS. Governor, he was like, oh, well, I don't follow DFS, but so much of what you guys talk about translates to my waiver wire. Or I think he was making a point that it translated to his trade, and he's just like, thanks, because your information was still valuable, even though I don't apply it to the same, contest or the same type of game. Donnie, you're okay with me sharing? I'm not going to share too much personal, but like how we met, right? And how we came about.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I used to run a Madden league, right? And a lot of people hated the way I ran it in some ways because I was so passionate and I cared so much about this league that if I felt like anything you did that was disrespectful, I was very principled to be like, hey, that's not cool. I'm very communal, but I'm very passionate and emotional about my communities. Like if you come at me in Gov or you come at Donnie, like I got that outsider kind of the family mentality. You're gonna meet me on the railroad tracks if you come at one of these. Just the way it is. Like I got your back. I'm very loyal in this way. And we had gotten burned by a lot of immature people in my league. Like I tried to promote them and give them more roles. And so like when I said we should bring Donnie on board to help run the Madden League, which means like reviewing trades just like you would fantasy football league or co-managing a dynasty league or something. There is some responsibility, but at the end of the day, it's just a game, and we got to take it somewhat serious. And I remember Donnie was just like, dude, you gotta calm down sometimes because what you do is so valuable and it's so passionate, but it doesn't get represented the right way because you're so passionate. And I think that's what I miss the most is like when I first started playing DFS, I was excited about every little win. And now Gov, it's almost like sometimes it's almost like I want to hear about my losses or like experience losses because it's like, well, you learn more when you lose. Or you get in that mindset, or it's like, damn it, I won this week. I'm gonna look selfish if I talk about all my good plays. And so, like, sometimes I'm thinking about that too much. I know, like, for example, after the podcast, we jumped on another call with some of our DFS people, and I'm just like, sometimes I have too much of a contrarian mindset where it's like, it's not that I think I'm smarter than you. It's like, I just want to be so far away from the field that sometimes I miss the obvious stuff. I guess that would be my point. And so, like, when Donnie is just like, hey, this brings more excitement to it, I'm like, dude, that it's so true, but we don't really think of it that way. It's just like I got this correlation. Of course, I'm going to watch DK Metcalf and Alvin Kamara play in the same game. But like to actually turn on your TV and be like, wait, this is the CBS game? I get to watch this with my chicken wings? Like, this is cool. Like, you just kind of miss the small details.
Well, we even talked about that. Like, I was not happy about the games I got in the 1 o'clock slate. But because I had a rooting interest in, I think was it DK Metcalf, I think? I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, first quarter, he scores a 50-yard touchdown. It's like, okay, now I'm sitting up in my seat.
Right.
Yeah, see, and like I said earlier, I maybe that's where I spoiled for so long. I don't know if I've actually watched the football game on CBS or Fox in like 6 years. I watch Red Zone every Sunday, all day until the night game. I only watch the single games on like ESPN and NBC for Sunday night, and now Amazon for Thursday night. On Sunday, from 1 to 6, I have the Red Zone channel on and have since the Red Zone channel's inception. Like I legitimately don't watch the CBS or the whatever the game is unless it's my team. Like if the Panthers are on Fox, I'll watch that game, but I'll have that on and Red Zone. So like all of my football intake for like a decade has been Red Zone. So all I get is touchdowns. So that's why like I had Red Zone in my ear. That's where it's like I hear the Gabe Davis touchdown. Then they immediately go to the next game where I hear the Metcalf touchdown. And they're not giving me one game that I'm watching, but I'm getting to see plays from every game. So maybe that skews differently because I legitimately, even the years where I didn't have work and was actually able to sit at home on the Sunday, all I watched was Red Zone. I didn't have on this one specific game, and I heard just those announcers and all of that. So that probably is a bias that I have, and I'm coming from a different area. I am 100% a red zone guy, which helped me become a fantasy guy, because if all I'm watching is the scoring plays, really, then like that's perfect for fantasy people. So like maybe I'm like the perfect storm of I'm a red zone watcher. So that means I'm more focused on the scoring and the big plays, which is what a fantasy like maybe most red zone guys are just heavy fantasy football guys. It very well could be. They do put up, like, they learned that the viewers wanted them to put up the top scores. So like as you're watching red zone, it just scrolls to the left. Hey, here's the top 5-6 quarterbacks and their stats. Here's the top 5 wide receivers and their stats. Here's the top 5 running backs and their stats. So it's like, if you're watching it, you sort of get that anyway. I don't even now. I learned to have DK Live open so I can look at specific games when I need to and just not wait on that. But that's my entire Sunday for football is the red zone. And then like when I watch a football game, it's usually an island game, and I actually do like watching them. Like I'm leaving tonight and I'm going to watch this Kansas City Raiders game at the bar like I do on Mondays. I expect a good game tonight.
I do too.
Now,
Raiders are going to crap the bed, and it's going to be a bad game, but I expect a good game tonight.
I want to see the Raiders win that game.
I think the Raiders will win. In fact, you guys know it. When I say something, I believe I usually put money on it. So if I bet on this game, it will be the Raiders. You can 100% guarantee that. Like I don't come on this podcast and say something I don't believe. I do think the Raiders will win. You guys could clip this, put out old takes exposed 2 years later. It wouldn't bother me a bit. I'm that convicted. And speaking of conviction, I do want to mention though, like that's funny you mentioned that, Gov, about your love for red zone, because I get pissed. I get pissed at myself if I watch red zone for more than 5 minutes.
I couldn't watch red zone. Also.
I truly do, and I think Donnie knows why, because Donnie knows me. Tell me if I'm. Tell the people if I'm wrong here, Donnie, because we just talked about me being transparent. I am such a purist that, like, I understand the value of red zone. I understand 100% why Gov would watch it. You get to watch all the games. Scott Hansen does amazing. You know, Sayana does amazing.
Like when there's not a team in scoring position, usually they end up just going to the lowest shown game across the nation from either CBS or Fox. So whichever game is not getting a lot of exposure is the game I'm going to get when other teams aren't scoring.
If it was the only way I could consume football, I would still feel kind of dirty about it. I would watch it because it's the only way, but I'd feel dirty about it. And this is why I'm such a purist that the only example I could come up with that would be any correlation, it's almost like saying I'm a basketball fan, but admitting to you that I watch the Globetrotters. I want to watch the entire sport. I want to see the fouls. I want to see when the referees mess up. I like the human error. I don't like the broadcasters because I feel like they add to a bias. Like, I am that weird guy where it's like I'd rather be around other smart analytical people. I usually listen to PFF podcasts while games are going on. So I don't know why, but like I have watched the red zone and do for fantasy purposes, just like Joe was talking about. It's so much easier to see the gone in 60-second kind of action, especially when you're sweating multiple outcomes. But it just feels like infidelity to me. It feels like, yeah, you're giving me football, but you're trying to cheat the sport. I don't know if that's me being crazy in my mindset, but I'm sure Donnie would tell you, yeah, that sounds like Logan. He's such a weird purist that way. I understand the same.
I'm the same way, though. I would rather watch the whole drive, see everything happen, how they got into the position. The touchdown, in my eyes, feels like more rewarding. I get to know exactly what happened there. I enjoy watching.
But here's the funny part, though. I watched an hour and a half podcast about how they put together the red zone from a structural standpoint. and that would have been the best podcast I had watched all year. So like, even though I'm not a huge fan of the content, like I love the behind the scenes like minutia of it. Like the guy doesn't use the bathroom, Donnie. Like you think Mel Kiper's water is rock solid, and then like the way they call the witching hour and like they got magic there. It's just it's
Oh yeah, they do a good production around what they have been advertised and doing the entire time of Red Zone, which is we're going to show you all the scoring plays. We're going to try to give you the highest, like any game that's literally in the red zone. If you get inside the 25-yard line, we can go to that game. Otherwise, like I think this week, like when a team wasn't inside the 20-yard line, they just showed Jacksonville, Houston.
I've never even experienced red zone at all. I've never looked into it or anything.
My God, I specifically got rid of cable. Well, no, when I finally got rid of cable, the last thing holding me was I had to find somewhere I could get red zone before I got rid of cable.
Yeah.
And I found that Sling had red zone. So at that point, it's like, okay, get rid of cable, just pay for internet, and I'll pay for Sling now. And that's really what I pay for Sling. I have Sling for the entire year, and I watch random television shows and Fox, and like I found out that it has I found out this year's that 3 days a week they have basically a red zone for MLB.
Yeah,
during the MLB season. So it's literally just every game's on. Whenever a guy is like, it goes to every game that's got a major dude at bat. Anytime you got 3, 4, 5 coming up in the order, or anytime there's a pitcher on an alert or something, or men on base scoring in position, and it would just start go from game to game. And like, I like consuming that in certain aspects, especially with like baseball or that. Like when it comes to like baseball, that's a long game. I have the opinion of like baseball is the one game I don't even like watching on television. If I'm going to watch a baseball game, I want to go to the baseball game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Whereas the other sports, like basketball, I love, and I love watching basketball. And like that, I love watching basketball games. I'm not sure I would watch a red zone for basketball. I think I'd rather just like, what's the game on? I want that game, especially since I play a lot of showdown basketball. So I'm looking for that specific game anyway. Those nights when I have a showdown on the ESPN game, like that's a fun night. Those are fun nights in NBA.
Well, this review show is like really cool to me because we reviewed a lot in like more of a concept way than the play. But let's get back to the construction of a lineup. But I did want to mention before I forget, I do want to get your guys' take on a concept that's brand new that I think is going to affect DFS quite a bit this year that nobody's talked about on the review shows yet. So buckle up. We usually get flex games. You know, Gov just talked about watching the island games and how much fun it is. They're going to start flexing in week 6 now. They started flexing games earlier and earlier. It went from they could flex the last 4 to now they could flex, I think, week 11. Now it's week 6, Gov. How do you think that's going to affect the main slate? Not only as us as players, but do you think, because Donnie might not know this, we used to get a Sunday night included in our DFS lineups. They took that away so they could get more showdown eyeballs, I believe. Personally, that's my belief why they did it. Do you think we're going to, like, how do you think that affects DFS? Do you think we get more showdown? Do you think it makes no difference?
I mean, we won't get more showdowns or anything. It's not like they can just change a time completely.
No. I mean,
like to be honest, and to be honest, I don't think this affects it at all because, they might be able to flex games earlier in the season, but you still have to flex a game 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
So there will be no pricing. It's not like they're going to have a slate and pricing, and then all of a sudden have to take a whole game out and put a whole game in that then has to be accounted for. By the time the slate and DraftKings will release the pricing for that slate,
Right.
you'll already know that this game went from a 4 o'clock game to the Sunday night, and the Sunday night game is now a 4 o'clock game.
I
Like,
guess,
that's the thing. Those switches will still have to be done
yeah.
multiple weeks out, even if you can start doing it now instead of like. I think you were right. I didn't think they were able to do it until after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Before. So that's like week 12 or something.
I want to get Donnie back in here real quick, but I just want to add. I'm talking like, do you think the prize pool for these showdown slates will get bigger? And I know they obviously won't change the structure, but I do think, for example, like we do see chalk or fun games or like Mahomes and Allen. We're going to see them less and less on the main slate potentially. Do you think that's going to change the way people correlate? Do you think people will correlate less? Do you think it makes any sort of difference at all?
That is something to think about. Like, if they start doing this more regularly, and now all of a sudden Lamar's and Allen's and Mahomes are just never on the main slate because they're always being put in the Sunday night game, that could cause lineups to be built differently, because now you're taking away a lot of the ceiling quarterbacks. So, like, if that starts happening, I could see quarterback positioning. I could see that the quarterback position could become even more scarce. So it's like, on the one hand, you'll have people attacking it as like, well, if there's only now one dude who can ceiling, I'd rather take stabs at cheaper dudes who can get close to that and fill in the lineup. And then you'll have guys like, well, then I guess I'm just going to max out this one or two guys who actually have the ceiling still.
Well,
it's like, like if this last week, let's say you took or what was it, the week before? Like, let's say week 4, you took that Buffalo-Baltimore game and made it the Sunday night game.
Yep. That's what everyone wanted to be the Sunday night game.
Yeah, let's say you did that like they were going to.
Yeah.
Now you're basically only it's like, well, I guess I'm just stacking Brady or Hurts on the Sunday slate, or I have to take a puke stack. Because there's no other like real good plays, and like Herbert was hurt that week. It's like there were no other real good plays that week. Maybe like now you're talking about like like doing that more often could result in different kinds of lineup builds.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily good or bad though. We always talk about that in review. It's not good or bad because we're all playing by the same rules. So
exactly.
like,
everyone will have to adjust to that.
Yeah, we're seeing London games, take away from some of the minutes. Like, but I was able to win most of my money back for all the games I lost on Showdown. So, like, it's funny how people complain about a certain structure, but then when it wins the money, they're happy. Donnie, what was your kind of takeaways from that? Just as a football guy, like, do you like it? Do you not like it?
The flexing thing?
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. That's hard to follow in my eyes. I don't really understand what you're even.
It just gives them the ability to change the mainstream.
Yeah. They have had the ability to switch whatever the already scheduled Sunday night game to a different game based off of, like, let's say a team has their guy get hurt and now it's like, well, we thought this team would be good, so they have 2 Sunday night games, right, but now they're gonna maybe be like a team that gets like a top 10 pick in the draft. Do we really need to showcase them on Sunday night? Let's start flexing their game out for a better game from the year. And like, you don't know at the start of the year what it is, so they always had that in there to be able to like flex in. Once we see that this team's really good, maybe we get them against a good team.
Right.
Like, I remember one year that happened after Cam had a good year. They flexed him versus the Patriots into like the Sunday night or something. I remember they did that one year. So it's like, oh, okay, he's doing good, so let's flex him into the Sunday night game against New England or someone. But like they'll start doing that. So So like I could see them doing that maybe.
Funny enough,
And being able to do it, but they, like I said, they've usually only been able to do it after week 12. Now, I don't know if it helps any or if they'll actually have the conviction to do it before week 10 when you know what the playoff, once you get to week 10, you sort of know what the good playoff teams are. So now maybe you showcase the games that are going to be against two maybe playoff teams.
So like last year, it would have been the Bengals that they would have.
Yeah, they would have tried to flex in the Bengals, especially if they were playing like Pittsburgh or playing one of the playoff teams,
right.
playing a Kansas City or something like that.
Well, for example, they're thinking about doing, I think they have to decide by tomorrow because they have to give enough notice, but they're considering doing it, I believe it's Sunday Night Football, but it might be Monday. They're considering moving Tua, or I don't even remember who they have, but it's the Tua situation where they thought they were getting Tua. If they get Thompson without Teddy, they might flex that game out and put the Dallas Cowboys and hope they get Dak Prescott against the Detroit Lions. Because the gambling community has loved Detroit and they've seen a spike in just the underdog nature of Detroit. And then obviously you got the household name of Dallas. So they always do well on primetime. So that would just be an example. So I did want to mention how that could change building a lineup. Now, let's do one more review of a really good lineup. And I just want to kind of hit on where they made mistakes, what they did right, where they got lucky, and just like your overall view. And I want to have this discussion. Do you think Gabe Davis was a good one-off play? Or do you think a guy like Diggs was just safer? I know we mentioned it. That was just a popular stat. Or I guess the better question is, should you just double stack going forward? Should you just go what this young man did, where it's I'm going to get Diggs and Davis, because if I'm going to win the damn thing, I want to be at the top.
I mean, I always prefer to double stack, especially in a tournament, and try to get all those points.
Yeah.
I do think it all depends on what you were trying to do. When we were building our lineup, we wanted to get a stud. So that's why we put in Diggs. If we were saying we need a one-off, I'd like to get a one-off from that Buffalo game because of how good of a game it is to go into a lineup, then it's now you ask, can we take a higher owned guy? Do we have the money to take the higher owned guy? Let's go Diggs, or should we pay down a little bit and go with a lesser owned guy? Then let's do Davis. Now you're asking that if you wanted it as a one-off, but no, I don't think our play of Diggs was a bad play at all. I like chalky running backs, double stack. Decided not to went with the chalk. It's a pretty cashy lineup. You took a cash core. You decided to correlate with the double stack. Instead of doing the bring back, you basically took the best two plays in the same range as the main bringbacks, because the main bringbacks would have been Pickens and Freiermuth, and they would have been in that same range as Marvin Jones and Njoku and that. So you basically you would have had the money for the bringbacks. You decided to use all the other plays in that range you got them at lower ownership. And then you were able to jam in some chalk defense and chalk running backs on your stack. It's not bad. It's not a bad lineup at all.
But this is where he got lucky. And I don't I'm going to harp on this and probably until I'm dead. When I say lucky, I'm not saying bad. Again, this game to me is mostly skill with accepting the luck. And where this lineup got lucky was Ramondre Stevenson became the only running back active for the Patriots because Harris got injured.
It's entirely possible Stevenson only gets 15 points if Harris doesn't get injured. That's entirely correct.
And he would still make profit, but he wouldn't have won 1,000.
Yeah.
So that in itself, I mean, like Rondell Moore, I think last week had 4 points. This week he had 13. So matchup does matter too, and you can't be afraid to go back to some plays as well. Donnie, what was like? That was like one of your first times building a DraftKings lineup. Where do you think we went wrong from a structural standpoint?
Can you show us our team just one more time?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to pull it up anyways, but I just wondered if you had any like theory ideas. Like, is there anything? I guess more so. Now you think about our lineup. Is there anything like next? You're like, I want to do this. I think this. We should.
That's a better way to put it. Is there anything after building our lineup and seeing that and seeing the other lineups we've gone through that you're like, well, I definitely think this is something we should be doing?
I mean, I enjoy Stars and Scrubs a lot. I know Logan usually, like when we talked about it before we even had the podcast at all, you used to talk about Stars and Scrubbed. I like the mindset of that. And now I'm learning more about it too. I'd like to try a different lineup that wasn't specifically like that motto, just because but you know, I wouldn't know how to
maybe
even
one
think about
time this week we'll build a more balanced build and not go all Stars and Scrubs.
Yeah. Well, I was going to recommend this, and
I don't mind like Stars and Scrubs is usually a good way to build if you can find the value for it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to recommend we do it this way. So, like, remember how last week we built a lineup with 3 main pillars, the 3 main pillars we chose? We won $3. Why don't we do the same thing with 3 different lineups next week? And we can even mix and match the contest in which we put it in. And that can be a theory in itself. Like we did win $3 this week. I don't mind reinvesting it and seeing how far we can build a bankroll. I do think it would be beneficial for some of these younger people, or as our podcast grows and we grow an audience, like why don't we just try to grow the bankroll?
I'm fine doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One theory that I have, I'll just float it out there, and this will be a good way to close because then people will have something to look forward to on Friday. And what we can do is kind of go through our initial thoughts of like how we want to build a lineup, and then Donnie can give us his spread picks, and we'll get out of here, or the spread update. Sorry. One of my kind of like, I have this building block theory that I've been really working on and really liking. I got it from 1 Week Fantasy and Jam to Win, and like I've kind of custom made it to my own preferences. But like one thing I want to do to build on it is try to build a lineup where I don't pick a quarterback right away and see what quarterback fit after I put everything else in the lineup, including the defense. Because I do think you get bogged down by, I got this quarterback, so I have to correlate. Like it's the first position in the slot, so I just feel like we get married to that idea too much. Maybe not even me, just like the casuals. And it's like if I'm going to beat the rate, I got to start thinking outside the box.
Okay, I just wanted to ask this. I know we were stuck between 2 quarterbacks when we were going the cheaper route. We were stuck between a Lawrence and Ingram stack in the Mariota London that we did.
Yep.
Would have Lawrence and Ingram been a better player?
No, Lawrence did not have as many points as Mariota. So
even
if we'd have gone like Lawrence and a cheap receiver like Zay Jones or Marvin Jones, it wouldn't have done it. No.
Ingram did really well though for the tight end play.
Yes.
But Lawrence did not. Ingram, I think, had 12 points. Well, for example, a 3K wide receiver, Jacoby Brown, who hadn't played any snaps for Washington Commanders, was 3K, but caught like 2 passes on 2 targets for like 150 yards. He wasn't a good play, even though he got the same amount of points as Stephon Diggs, but Diggs got 10 more targets than him, literally 10 more targets. So sometimes you can't be result oriented, Donnie. as tempting as it is, like I know what you're saying. You're saying like, damn, but what could have been? But that's
No,
kind of the
yeah,
fun
I
of
was
it.
just curious. Like,
No, that's the fun of it. Like, trust me, I love review shows. Like, I like review shows more than I actually like the games. I think at some point. So, any other like theory ideas that you kind of had for next week, Gov or Donnie, or we just want to get to the spread picks and get out of here?
Let's get the spread picks real quick. How are we doing so far?
All right, Donnie, you got the spreadsheet?
yes, I do.
I'll pull it up if you want to screen share, but if not, it's all right. Just to read it off.
I just did it.
I got you.
All right. So let me know when it's on the screen, and I'll start going through.
You're all set, buddy.
All right. Our lock of the week this week would have been the Jets at plus 3.5, which I mean that's smash for us. Logan, you had the Steelers at plus 14 and the Lions money line. Both ended up losing. I can't believe how bad the Steelers played. I thought they was going to be closer. Gov had the Cleveland at plus 2, Seattle plus 5, which was we put it as a tie because of the Cleveland plus 2 and Seattle.
Yeah, gotta hate the push,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you can't win them all.
Seattle. That was
I
that
thought
was
Seattle was going to
yeah.
be close too.
Yeah.
Like-
That puts Gov at 4-3-1, and I had the Titans at -1 and the Giants at +8, which gets me at 7-1.
Yep.
Now, I want to mention we're going to do something fun next week, right? We're going to add a friends and family portion to next week's pick show. So we're only going to be able to control one pick. The other picks have to be agreed on by either a friend or a family member within our circle. So I think Gov was going to try to bring on his dad. Donnie had another person. I'm going to probably bring on my friend. So it'll be interesting to see what we come up with. And then we have our group bet, which I thought was really an awesome concept. So as this show grows, we'll expand different ideas. We'll try, we'll fail. Just like you guys, we're not always going to hit. We're not always going to win. And sometimes, just like Gov, you got to take the tie. You got to be okay with, hey,
take the push, take the money, move on to another week.
Right. Hey, the Texans and Colts in the division are probably glad it was a tie and not a loss, because you never know what might happen in that division. So just like that, everything is a learning experience, guys. Have a good one. And just like we're tightening up the show, I want to keep it about an hour. So we're going to do that. We'll see you guys again on Friday. Thanks again for watching. Take care, like and subscribe. Hit all the buttons. Anything else?
Have a good one.
Peace out, everyone. Comment down below. We'll see you on. We're gonna do actually.
Saturday.
We're gonna do Saturday, right?
Saturday works for me.
Okay.
Yep.
Saturday it is then.
Yep. And I got the major fire. I'm going to be bringing the energy then, man. I'll be off of work. I'll be ready. All right. Good night, guys. Have a good one.